Welcome to the Get a Foot in the RPG Industry Door with Community Content panel. My name is Michael O'Brien and I'm Vice President at Chaosium, which is the publishers of Call of Cthulhu, RuneQuest and other games. And one of the hats I wear there is actually looking after our community content programs. And joining us on the panel today, we have Lysa Penrose and we have MT Black. Lysa, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, I'm Lysa Penrose. I am a storyteller, host, and brand manager of DungeonMastersGuild.com, which is a platform where you can license and publish 5th edition D&D content.
And MT.
Hi there, I'm MT Black. I'm a freelance game designer. I mostly operate in the Dungeons and Dragons world, but I've branched out into a few other things as well.
So I think we'll start the panel off by mentioning that there is a chat thread for the panel. I believe it's on Discord, and we will be over there, or at least some of us will be over there if you have any questions to ask there on that panel. I was going to point to the left or right where the chat is, but anyway, it's going to be fun. I think the best thing we need to start the panel off with is defining exactly what community content is and why it's a great way to get your foot into the industry door. Lysa, you're the brand manager of the biggest community content platform there is. Do you want to just tell people exactly what it's all about?
Yeah, absolutely. So at least for Dungeon Masters Guild, community content lets you take any intellectual property that is part of Dungeons and Dragons and use that in adventures, supplements, additional core rules, basically anything you want to create within Dungeons and Dragons, you can do that and publish it as part of Dungeon Masters Guild. There is a certain box and rules and guidelines that you have to follow. There are certain settings that your adventure or supplement needs to take place in, or it has to be setting neutral. But if you're playing within that box, it unlocks a whole set of existing 5th edition and previous edition D&D lore that you then get access to.
And we have a similar community content platform for Call of Cthulhu. It's called the Miskatonic Repository. We have one for our RuneQuest RPG, which is called the Jonstown Compendium. And we have one for our 7th Sea game, which is called the Explorers Society. And I believe there's probably about another dozen or so for other game systems as well. And you can find them all on DriveThruRPG. The Dungeon Masters Guild was the first one. And I am going to shamelessly say that when Chaosium thought, hey, we're going to get into this community content, we looked at how the DMs Guild did things, and our guidelines and the way it operates is pretty much essentially the same. So everything we talk about in this panel today will pretty much work across all of these different community content platforms. Now, MT Black, this is where you got your start in the RP industry door. You got your foot in the door, didn't you? Can you tell us a bit about your journey?
Yeah, for sure. I think like many people, I've been playing D&D and other role-playing games for many, many years. Here in Sydney, where I'm based, probably didn't have as many opportunities as folk in the US do to probably meet other creators or other dungeon masters. That happens a bit more in the US. Some of us overseas are a little bit more isolated. But like a lot of people who are at dungeon mastering, I was in game mastering, I was creating a lot of my own content, and for many years having a dream of publishing something in D&D, but that seemed too big a bridge to cross, really. Then the Dungeon Masters Guild started up, and I was really delighted. I couldn't believe I could publish something officially and put the Dungeons and Dragons stamp on it. That was really exciting. So I started in very soon after the program kicked off. It was 2016. I created my first few products. They weren't very exciting. I didn't have a lot of the skills back then, but it was exciting to actually be able to participate in the program. And I enjoyed the act of, I guess, self-publishing so much. I just kept doing that, learning skills and building that up over time. And that's 4 years later, that's become really a good second career for me. I've continued to publish a lot of material in the DMs Guild, but I've also had the chance to work with other companies as well, including Wizards of the Coast on some of their official titles. So that's been a really exciting journey for me. But I can say without a doubt it would not have happened without the DMs Guild and without the concept of community content creation.
And Lysa, the DMs Guild started in 2016, and 4 years later, I was looking there the other day. There's not hundreds of items on there. There's probably not even thousands of items. Would there be tens of thousands of items now?
Easily. There's so much content that goes up. Goodness, like even like each day, so many different titles get published. It's really exciting.
And this is from creators all around the world, which is another exciting aspect of it as well. And I think, as MT mentioned, I'm also in Australia as well. And when I began my RPG journey long ago, the way you get to communicate with people on the other side of the world is you'd actually have to write a letter and stick a stamp and send it away. So the opportunities are so much bigger today. So the Miskatonic Repository, our Call of Cthulhu community content site, it started about 18 months ago, and it certainly doesn't have tens of thousands of items in it as yet. But again, it's a site where content is being added every week by creators all over the world, and it gives people an opportunity to share their creations with a very wide audience, because DriveThruRPG is the biggest digital platform for sharing content, RPG content that you can find. It's a wonderful thing. So, MT, what was your first creation on the DMs Guild?
It was I looked this up the other day. I put it up about 3 days after the DMs Guild started.
Oh, you were really early adopter then.
Oh, I wanted to get going. Yeah, I was chomping at the bit after many years of creative frustration. But it was called Fantastic Feats, and it was a book of feats. And I often tell people, no exaggeration, I didn't really know how to edit a book. I didn't know how to lay out a book, and I didn't understand 5e feats very well at all either. So the book didn't look great. The content wasn't great, but it was a start, and that's kind of how I've learned. I've learned by doing, and I kind of encourage people. The biggest thing I think that stops folk creating is just the fear of it's not going to be good enough. But when I look at some of the very primitive things I produced 4 years ago compared to where I've come over the last 4 years, you've really just got to jump into the water and give it a go and start creating. And I've come a long way.
So Lysa, what resources are there to help people start this journey? Because it can be a very daunting prospect to say, I've got some great ideas, I've written some things down, I've got scribbled notes. What does the DMs Guild itself and the Miskatonic Repository and Jonstown Compendium, etc., what do they give you as a toolkit to help you begin this creative journey?
Well, I'd say there are sort of two different buckets of resources for Dungeon Masters Guild. And one of those are resources that Dungeon Masters Guild provides itself. So if you go onto dmsguild.com, there's like a sidebar that has filters that you can click on. And one of those categories is resources for DMG creators. If you are a beginner creator, you don't have an art budget to speak of, you're not even sure how to lay out an adventure, adventure, you're going to find there style guides that come from Wizards of the Coast directly, including style guides for the Forgotten Realms specifically as a setting. And so little things like knowing that instead of a week, it's a 10-day, those sorts of things. A template to use for an adventure, and also so many art packs provided by Wizards of the Coast. It's artwork pulled from earlier editions of D&D that you have at your disposal. That is one bucket of resources. I'd say your other really, really big resource, though, and this is a big one for community content, is the DM's Guild community itself. If you go onto, there's an unofficial Discord group, there's an official Facebook group for creators, and on Twitter's there's hashtag DM's Guild, which is super, super active. Though that community loves helping new creators, loves encouraging each other, and collaborating on projects. So if you're new and you just need someone to keep you accountable on a project, encourage you to hit that publish button, or answer any questions that you have, I think the community is probably your biggest resource.
The same thing actually applies for Chaosium's community content as well. We also have user guidelines, we have templates. So you don't have to worry about how am I going to lay this out? How's it going to look? You can just download the template and put your text into it, and it's going to come out looking really nice. In fact, I was very gratified the other day. We had a reviewer write about a recent product that came out, and they said it's getting hard to tell the difference between an official Chaosium product and a Jonstown Compendium product in terms of just the quality of the layout and the artwork and things like that. And that's a very gratifying thing for a creator, an independent creator, to see that in a review. The other one that we also have very similar are the art packs, where we provide a whole lot of art from previous products and so on that you can put into your releases, and you get to use those royalty-free or without any other issues there. We also have in ours, Call of Cthulhu is a game that's set in the real world. So we've put some in our guidelines, we've put some links to things, some real life libraries like the New York libraries, and I can't remember the names exactly of them here, but they're in the guidelines. And they have a whole lot of copyright free and royalty free artwork and photographs. British Museum is one of them actually. And they're great things that you can put in as well, and you don't have any issues about the use of those. And then the other great thing is we do have creators that create art packs of their own too, don't we? That you can use, and that's a great way. So how have you used the community, MT, to build your products?
Yeah, it's as Lisa said, it's really, the community is really important and has been a really enjoyable part of the journey, is being part of the community, and also really valuable in terms of learning skills. So when we first started off, we didn't really have an easy way to find each other. We'd all be kind of publishing and we're all in a silo. And then social media groups just started naturally evolving, and Lisa's mentioned a few of those on Facebook, on Twitter, on Discord. It's quite big now as well. And it really the case early on of just starting to reach out to people. You'd see someone's work that you like, you'd try and find them on Facebook or on Twitter. You'd start to talk to them, and then if they liked some of your work as well, you might establish a bit of a friendship, and you might decide to collaborate on a project as well. So probably the first year, or probably the first 6-7 months, I was doing just about everything solo. And then I started to reach out to creators whose work I saw and I like, and started to establish partnerships. And that's just really evolved over the last 4 years, where I've met dozens, I probably know a couple of hundred creators, to varying degrees now on the DM's Guild. I've chatted to a lot of folk, and I've participated in some absolutely fabulous collaborations. Even just this week, we put up we released a book about a week ago, which involved about a dozen people. We all collaborated together on Discord, producing that book. And one of our collaborators was Ed Greenwood, the creator of the Forgotten Realms. That was a lot of fun to work with him. Yeah, and Ed was on the Discord chat with us, and it was interesting too. He said at the end of it, he said he was amazed at how quickly the book came together. Came together in about 3 months. He just said, just the way the team worked and the use of technology allowed us to respond and resolve issues incredibly quickly. And that allows us to, that's a combination of both the modern social media technology and also finding new ways to work and having a large team. It made a real impression on him. I thought that was interesting. But yeah, the community's been absolutely vital, as well as providing some really good friends. Some people who I talk to every day or two now. So it's fabulous.
So Lysa, you're the brand manager for the DMs Guild. So I guess it's your job to promote the brand and build those communities together. Has that process been, is that accelerating in recent years with the great success with fifth edition?
I'd definitely say that the Dungeon Masters Guild community is increasingly enthusiastic, creative, and collaborative. And I've been with the Guild for about 2 years now. Wow, time flies. And I'd say over those 2 years, the Guild has gotten more and more collaborative. I'm starting to see in those top products that carousel on the website, more and more of those are large collaborations between a dozen to 20 or even more creators.
Wow.
And that's folks who are maybe writers all working on different encounters, but also they're getting in people who specialize in editing, in layout, in illustration. And these projects can start as a single tweet, someone just putting out into the universe. Wouldn't it be so cool to have an anthology about adventures that focus on this one very niche thing? And then it kind of snowballs, people get excited, they're retweeting it, they're joining in the conversation, and then all of a sudden you've got a new Discord or a new Slack group going where everyone's collaborating and making this thing come to fruition.
Oh, that's wonderful. We've noticed the same thing as started to happen with our community content as well, and we've started to have people making those comments of, hey, I just realized that if I did this all by myself, if I'd had other people involved here, it would have happened a lot faster and maybe been a lot better in terms of bringing certain strengths to it. So I'm gonna shamelessly say that the Miskatonic Repository, the Jonstown Compendium, we're watching what the DMs Guild does, and we don't want to reinvent the wheel. You guys are really leading the way. So, what latitude do creators have for material that's in a community content release? Is there a quality issue?
I would say, we don't go through and grade things on quality and include or not include things. MT said, gosh, if you're worried about something not being good enough, you're first of all probably your biggest critic. But secondly, the biggest goal for me with Dungeon Masters Guild is trying to break down those barriers to folks being able to publish content, create content. And so I wouldn't say that there are quality barriers there. The limitations are going to be versus the open gaming license, where you can truly create whatever the heck you want, as long as you're only using an allowed section of D&D IP. You get access to all of D&D IP, but you have to create within the Forgotten Realms, Ravnica, Ravenloft, Eberron, and Theros. You're not allowed to use someone else's IP randomly inserted into D&D. And I mean, there's other rules, like you've got to be allowed to use the artwork you're using, those sorts of things. But that's really it in terms of limitations.
Well, I mean, there's very common sense rules about not using other people's, violating other people's copyrights and trademarks and things. I mean, that would apply whether you were doing community content or any publishing at all. We have an interesting principle in creating stuff for our RuneQuest role-playing game, and that's set in the world of Glorantha, which was created by Greg Stafford. And very, very early on in the piece, this is a game that's been around since the late 1970s. Greg Stafford said, your Glorantha will vary, which means, you know, it's what you do with the world could be different to what we have. So what we've said is what Chaosium publishes is the official canon for the world. And that's going to be in our official publications. And for us, canon only matters for official publications, for which is published by Chaosium, and you know, maybe we have licensees. For Jonstown Compendium creations, we very, very clearly say that your Glorantha will vary. We have to stick to canon, but that's a restriction on our interpretations of Glorantha, not yours. Yours can vary as much or as little as you want for what you create. And then other than that, we basically say, go knock yourselves out. And that gives people a huge amount of freedom. Now they can be as close to our canon as you want, but you don't have to necessarily follow that. And then, and this applies to all of the community content sites. You're not allowed to have material that a reasonable person would consider, you know, libelous or defamatory or racist or homophobic or discriminatory, etc., etc. I mean, that's all just common sense.
Can I add one thing to that?
Sure.
So that's the same with Dungeon Masters Guild, where it's like the official publications are canon, but you can really play with the world for community content. But the other thing with community content is once you publish something, it kind of becomes a part of this pool of property open to other community creators. So if one creator wants to make, I don't know, this like really powerful wizard NPC named Joe, then other community creators can take Joe and put them into their worlds as well, or their versions of these worlds.
And the same applies for the other community content programs as well. Because as I said, we looked at what the DMs did, and we've pretty much covered it. So that's all incorporated in what's called the End User License Agreement, or EULA. And that sort of spells out exactly how all of that works. But it's an important note to say that when you do your creation and you upload it to the community content platform, it does not go to WotC or Chaosium or whoever to be verified, checked, reviewed, edited, or whatever. It goes up there. If something gets flagged as problematic, it can be then taken down, but there is not a hurdle from the publisher to say whether something goes up or not. So we are relying on the community to be doing the right thing in all of these cases. And, you know, there are isolated instances where things may have to be taken down or changed, but that's, I think, a very, very rare occurrence. So MT, you started with community content. And that's how you got your foot in the door of the RPG industry. Tell us a bit about what that led.
Sorry, I just missed the last question.
Oh, I was just going to say, tell us where that eventually led.
Oh, yeah. So that, you know, that led on a really exciting journey with a bunch of doors opening up. I was publishing a lot, which is which can be a helpful thing, I think, if you're trying to catch people's eyes, just to have a steady stream of content. I think, someone might publish one great thing and then you never hear from them for 2 years and you're not sure, was that 20 years of work or went into that publication, so that just to have things coming out, people put your name there and people see you, and if they think, okay, you're putting out a quality of work, you can possibly, you can probably hit a deadline. Mm-hmm. About a year after I'd started publishing, I was mostly focusing on adventures by this time. I was approached by Baldwin Games to write one of their adventures for the upcoming Gen Con. So that was really exciting for me. I'd never been to Gen Con, but I knew, obviously it's a fairly legendary event. So that was for their 50th anniversary. So that was actually one of the first opportunities, I guess, that had opened up. It really excited me, and I had a lot of fun writing adventure for that.
So they saw you through the Dungeons Guild. That's where you came.
That's right. Yep. Yeah, that's right. They were looking around for creators. They had a couple of people on the team, and they said, we need a third person to do for this trilogy. And one of the other creators said, how about we check out MT Black? I see his adventures published pretty often. I like them, and so just through doing that door had opened up. So that was pretty exciting, and probably 6 or 7 months after that, things got more exciting, and it all happened quite quickly. I got an email from one of the Adventurers League administrators, Adventurers League being the organised play program. And once more, they'd seen my material. They said, we like it. You can obviously write adventures because you keep publishing them and people keep buying them. So would you like to write some adventures for us? And again, I haven't been to America in terms of the D&D world. I haven't gone to the conventions or rubbed shoulders with people in real life over there. This is all just through publishing on the platform. So that was terrific. Not long after that, I was invited by Chris Lindsay, who's the fellow who, the architect of the DM's Guild is the title he prefers. And he invited me to participate in the DM's Guild Adept program, which is where they give a small group of creators access to special resources and early access to the hardcover books to create content for it, to create kind of like a premium line of content. And while I was still catching my breath from all these exciting things, one day in, it must have been March 2018, I got an email from Adam Lee, who's one of the our senior designers at Wizards of the Coast, asking me if I wanted to be one of the writers on the book that turned into Descent into Avernus, and that astounded me. I think I've told the story before, but I was at work in the office and I read this email and I couldn't breathe. I got up and I was walking around the office, barely able to speak, and I rang my wife up and couldn't speak. I went, blah, blah, blah. And she said, "What's happened? Have you lost your job?" And it took me a couple of minutes to catch my breath, but it was that was incredibly exciting for me. It was a dream I'd had when I was 13 years old, to write something official for Wizards of the Coast, and for Dungeons and Dragons. It was TSR back then, and that was that was a really exciting time. And I've probably had 6 or 7 contracts with WotC since then, working on a whole range of stuff that I've been able to do for them. Some of their charity modules, a whole bunch of Adventurers League stuff, and some other stuff as well. So and that's all come just by me here in Sydney, sitting in front of the computer and publishing stuff for the DM's Guild. So so I'm a huge fan.
I think a very, very exciting part of that for anyone that all over the world is the fact that you said you did this from Sydney, Australia, and I think back to in the days past where you are a long way from anywhere. How you do that? I had some things published in the early 1990s, and I had to do it from Melbourne, Australia, and it was very hard because, as I said, it involved putting a stamp on an envelope. You're not there, you're not meeting people at the conventions, and you've done this all through this platform, which I think just shows that it's an amazing opportunity.
It really is. And one thing I've noticed over the years is when you talk to people who've been in the gaming industry, pro game designers for a long time, the RPG industry, so many opportunities just seem to come from rubbing shoulders at conventions or at game stores and things like that. Whenever someone says, here's how I got into the gaming industry, it usually involved a bit of some personal friendships, the right place at the right time. And these create barriers for people who are physically not able to go to all the conventions and start to meet people and build relationships. And there are also other barriers as well for people who mightn't actually move in those circles very easily for whatever reason. You might come from another culture or something like that, or you might, you just might find that a hard circle to crack into. So there's a degree where this has been I've seen this as a great leveler for folk who are not moving and so.
Same. I was just going to add that, I hear so many stories about how back in the day you kind of had to be like at the bar after the convention, having drinks with people and talking to the right folks. And I mean, all those barriers you mentioned, MT, but also a lot of marginalized people and young women, especially, that isn't like the safest or most comfortable environment to be in. And so I think just like the existence of the internet, first of all, and then communities like Dungeon Masters Guild, where you can kind of be an introvert behind a computer screen networking and making friends by jumping into conversations, or even just like jumping in and collaborating on a project with someone. There's so many other ways now that you can kind of get that foot in the door.
Yeah, it's wonderful. I just wanted to just go back about the issue of quality and for a moment, and that is, we had a number of people that have done releases on our platforms, and it's digital content. And what they've done is they publish something, people might have liked it or may not have, but they've come back and did an updated version of it. And that's one of the great things about digital content. So there was one particular release on the Jonstown Compendium, and it was one of our inaugural releases. So when we launched this about a year ago, it was up there on day one, and it was 31 pages. Last week, a updated edition of it was done, and it's now 118 pages with new artwork, and they've sort of updated the layout and everything else. And the really cool thing was, if you were one of these early adopters and bought this product initially, you just got the 118 page version as an update, because that's how DriveThruRPG works. And the original creator, he did the initial one just by himself. This new one has, I think, about 5 or 6 people listed in the credits. So they had someone else come in and help with the layout, some new artists, some people redrew all the maps. And I think that is part of this creative journey as well, where you should be unafraid of putting something up that, maybe isn't as perfect as you want it to be, because you have that great opportunity to redo it again and again, if need be. Which I think is an exciting part.
I think so. I think that's so true. I think part of it is recognizing this is a new medium and adopting new ways of publishing, that dynamic aspect of it. I've seen that play out many, many times in really positive ways. Like one of a early adventure. This anecdote might prove the old adage: "Can you judge a book by its cover?" But one of the early releases was a little adventure, and I called it Into the Dragon's Den, and I had a fairly dud sort of a cover on it. Didn't look that good. Wasn't selling at all after a few days. People It wasn't being rated very well either. It was kind of averaging about 3 stars out of 5. And I thought, I just don't like this cover. I don't like the title. I thought, I'm taking this down and redoing it. And I changed a couple of things, but I really only changed the cover and the title. I retitled it Tower of the Mad Mage, put a much better picture on the cover, re-released that, and it sold like hotcakes. And it's one of my most popular adventures. And bizarrely is much better rated, like it's rated like 4.7 out of 5. And all that really changed was the cover. But I've had many experiences like that where this dynamic conversation happens with your audience. Adventure I wrote called Wizard in a Bottle. And I put it up and I thought it was good. And someone who bought a lot of my stuff wrote, this conversation still immortalized on the DM's Guild, wrote, I really like this, but the last room is no good. It's too boring. And I said to him, oh, you know, where do you see the problems? And this person said, here's what I see the issue is. And I actually went and rewrote the last room based on that feedback that happened in the chat, and republished it and to much better effect. And I've had many experiences like that where even so far, some people say, here's some typos I found. Some people can be a bit negative about that stuff, but some people like, I found some typos, and they do that in a positive spirit. Yep, you fix them all up, and that's great how it's all just so dynamic now.
Yeah. So Lysa, could you tell people about how do you work out how to price what you're going to be putting up there, and what are the different options that creators can have?
Yeah, well, I feel like a lot of people who are starting out will tend to price their work either free or more often pay what you want. I think pay what you want.
What does that mean? Can you explain what pay what you want means?
Yeah, so pay what you want. If someone wanted to go and just download this for $0, they could totally do that. They do have the opportunity to come back and pay for it after they've like read through it, or they've run the adventure, or at any time in the future. I feel like a lot of times folks like just have no idea what to price their work at, or they feel like, well, this is my first time. I don't know how this is going to be received. And so they'll do pay what you want. And some folks just like that option. Alternately, you can set it at any particular price. A lot of the times I direct people actually to the Adventurers League section. That's that official play that MT mentioned. Especially if you're doing like one shots. Adventurers League really, because there's so many people who are used to buying one shots through Adventurers League, they kind of both set the standard for what people are looking to pay for a certain amount of adventure time. And I know that the admins are constantly trying to like push that a little bit because they know they set that standard. I would also just look at what other folks are pricing as well if it's a much larger supplement. I will say that with pay what you want, folks don't always remember to return and pay for something. So something I've actually noticed a lot of creators doing very recently, like maybe in the past year, is they will set a price, but then they'll make their preview like fully available, like their whole product. And anecdotally, at least, I'm seeing creators say that that's actually producing better results for them. People will glance at the preview, see that this is something of value that they will enjoy, and then they will happily purchase it for the set price.
Oh, that's clever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll make sure
that's
Miskatonic Repository people that one. That's a good one. So
sorry, I backed that up. Yeah, Mob, I just said I backed that up. What Lysa said there, and that's something we've been doing lately with a lot of our products, like the one that I just mentioned before that we released last week with Ed Greenwood. That's it's about 115 pages and a $15 PDF, and the complete thing is available for preview. You can download all 115 pages. It's got a nice big preview or sample watermark through it. That's fine. But you can get a really good idea of what it's like. And we've sold 500 copies in the last week. It doesn't, it certainly doesn't appear to be negatively impacting sales. And we've got some pretty good anecdotal evidence that if people are seeing it, they can see it's what they want to buy. And then if they're the sort of people who are going to buy something, they'll buy it.
Yeah, I always encourage creators, if they're asking me, I encourage them to set a price, because you've spent time creating something. You should value your time and talent. I'll also say, if you set something for Dungeon Masters Guild, at least, if you set something as free or pay what you want, it does open you up to being able to be featured in our newsletter in like the little free section. But the rest of the newsletter is dedicated to priced PDFs. And anytime we do a sale or put together a bundle of some sort, which can really help boost sales, I look exclusively at priced PDFs. So that's another reason to value your work.
And we give very similar advice. And one thing I've told creators is, if you're expecting to make any sort of financial return from your product, don't have it as pay what you want, because the price people will typically pay is $0. So make it 99 cents. There are people that are not doing this with a motivation to make money. That's fine. You can price it free if you wish. Now, can we just tell people how the breakdown of the money that's made from a product comes? So if something sells for $10, how much does the creator get, and where does the rest of the money go?
On Dungeon Masters Guild, half of that, so $5, will go to the creator. And then it's $10, so the math is easy. $2 will go to Wizards of the Coast, or if you have like a Fantasy Grounds module, they might get some of that $2 as well. And then $3 goes to One Bookshelf for hosting Dungeon Masters Guild.
And that is exactly the same for the Chaosium community content programs, and I believe all the other ones as well. So essentially, the creator gets 50% of the whatever you sell the product for, which is very good.
You can also, if you're promoting your product on like your website or blog or social media for Dungeon Masters Guild, you can become an affiliate and have like a little add-on to the links that you're posting, and that'll eke out another 5% for you.
Yeah, they're called an affiliate link. And you just sort of add it on to the URL, don't you? It's like a set of numbers. The other interesting thing is that DriveThruRPG has metal rankings for the number of sales, and they go. I think copper's the lowest one. Is that like 100? Is that 100? 50. Let's ask MT, because he knows all about these metal rankings. He's had products go through them all.
Yeah. Copper is 50, silver is 100, electrum is 250, gold is 500, platinum is 1,000, mithril is 2,500, and adamantine is 5,000 products.
Adamantine. And
yes.
have any DM's Guild products made it to adamantine? Do we know?
Quite a handful.
Quite a few.
Actually, yes.
Quite a few.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, everyone, start doing the math in your head. 5,000 sold. You can actually, wow. So I can say that for the Miskatonic...
Michael, sorry. I was going to say, we saw an extreme example of this just recently, which I've never seen before. Keith Baker, who some of our listeners or viewers will know is the guy who invented Eberron. He just released a big book that the community had been waiting for 10 years for, really.
Okay.
230,000 words. It's a monster. It's a wonderful book. He priced the PDF at $30, and it went to adamantine in a little over a week. It sold 5,000 copies in a little over a week.
Wow.
Now that's exceptional. I've never seen that before, but yeah.
Well, I was going to say that we haven't had anything in our platforms quite get up to adamantine yet, but they're that way. But I've looked at some of these products that people have created, and you can make a fairly handsome return on the work that's done there. Now, you then, if you're doing this as a collaborative process, you'll have to work out how everybody involved gets remunerated or so on. That's entirely up to you, because you are in effect the publisher of this work. The other thing that you can do, certainly on our programs, and Lysa, you'll be able to tell us if it's on DM's Guild. At the moment, for example, there is the Cthulhu Mythos sale on DriveThruRPG at the moment. And it's 20% off Cthulhu Mythos stuff. Well, we sell a lot of those. All of the products that are in the Miskatonic Repository at the moment are eligible to be in that sale. So that's good because it gets in front of a lot of people. People see it as a great bargain and things like that. As you are the publisher, you can go into your publisher settings and opt in or out of sales and so on and so forth. Is the same thing on the DM's Guild like that?
It is exactly the same. I will say we have a great old one bundle. So ours is ever so slightly different in language. And a lot of our sales, we will do bundles where we're actually like curating titles based on a certain theme and deeply discounting a smaller group of these themed titles.
And that's then up to the creator, right? You can decide
that
whether you
is
want to be involved. Yeah.
Yes, and actually for these deeply discounted bundles, there is a setting that says that like just always include me if you want to in these bundles. But oftentimes we will email the creator directly just to ask if it's okay to include their title.
So our general advice to people is to say, include yourself in the sales, because then you get in front of a lot of other people with newsletters and mail outs and ads and things like
I'd endorse that. My long experience is it's always worth it. It's always worth it. I've always done very well out of sales, even if it's doing a really deep discount like 80% or something. They're well worth participating in.
Yeah, and that's definitely our experience as well. We are shortly running out of time in our panel. MT, could you give some basic advice to somebody who wants to make that first step? What would you tell somebody who has maybe been playing D&D for a while and has got a whole lot of scribbled notes there that they want to turn into something? What is the absolute next step they should take here?
Yep, this is, I've got a couple of bits of advice that I give to give out all the time. This is a little bit tailored towards adventure creation, but I think that's fine. But the first bit of advice is to get familiar with the style guide, which is published on the DM's Guild. It might sound a bit prosaic, but it's actually really important and will make your writing look so much more professional if it follows the style guide. I suggest to people in terms of adventures that you read a lot of other adventures, probably applies to everything. Actually read the classics, read adventures that are well reviewed. You know, if you want to write a novel, you read other novels. If you want to write content for D&D or for Call of Cthulhu, read other material. The third thing I suggest to people is that they use tools to make their life easier. And by tools, I mean things like it might be, for example, the templates is an example of a tool, but there's also a lot of tools that have been published, like there's something called the Tome of Adventure Design that's just hundreds of pages of reference tables that I use all the time when I'm creating. Don't just sit there and think I've got to create all this in my head. Look around and see what there is out there to help you create. And the fourth thing I really recommend now everyone does is that our friend Ashley Warren runs a course now called the RPG Writers Workshop. That had, how many people did it this year, Lysa? Do you remember? Was it like
hundreds of people? So many people.
Thousands. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
it's
yeah,
really
incredible.
blown. It's like exponentially growing every workshop.
It's amazing. Yeah, no, it was literally in the
designed
thousands.
for your first adventure, isn't it? I think that's the pitch for that, to say help you design your first adventure.
Yep.
Yeah, that was the theme for this summer workshop. Dungeon Masters Guild also, we sponsor RPG Writer Workshop. So there's a DM's Guild dedicated track. And at the end of that, everyone who's completed the course and published their adventure on DM's Guild, we actually help promote all of those as well.
Oh, sweet.
It's kind of like a nice boost.
We're looking at doing something very similar. An interesting thing we did last year is we worked with some university students as part of their university course to publish a Call of Cthulhu adventure. So they took it from initial creation all the way through to publication as part of a course for credit at their university. And we were very excited because it won an Ennies Judges Spotlight Award this year as well. It's called Refractions of Glasston, and it's available on the Miskatonic Repository. And we're looking at some ideas for that about how we could, work with other university courses and so on as well. So, I mean, there's lots of great ways that you can take those first steps. Lysa, is there anything else you'd like to suggest to someone who wants to take that first step?
Well, MT listed a bunch of really great advice. Second RPG Writers Workshop. I'd say one of the hardest things is really just like getting to the point where you can hit that publish button. So I would say limiting the scope of that first thing that you want to publish. A lot of folks have that like big campaign they've always been dreaming up, but maybe start with a one shot that kind of could eventually become a series of one-shots, and you could write your campaign that way. Or maybe even start with just an encounter. If you go to the Facebook group for creators, Dungeon Masters Guild creator Facebook group, or you get involved in the community on Twitter with hashtag DMs Guild, people are constantly using that hashtag or posting about big group projects they're doing. So you could start off writing a single encounter or a magic item or a handful of spells. How much easier does that sound? And once you get your first thing published, I think it becomes easier and easier. You kind of, it's like catch that, you get a taste of publishing, and next thing you know, you're MT Black, I guess.
Yeah, and I would just add to all of that advice, the revelation that the idea is you can actually write something and publish it, and then you can come back to it later and do a new edition. And say, hey, I'm going to do a new edition of that. And you know what? The people that first bought that, they're going to be really excited about that. They're going to say, that's fantastic. We saw that this very week with one of the things we just released on the Jonstown Compendium, the thing I talked about. But the initial one was 31 pages. It's now 118 pages. And, you think if the person had in their head, oh, I'm going to do this magnum opus, it may not have ever got done because it might just be too big. So yeah, taking those first steps are really important. So we are just about out of time. We hope that everyone has found this to be a useful discussion. We've given you some places you can go and look at in terms of taking things forward in the different community content platforms. I'm sure we're going to put them in like the links below or at the side or wherever they are when this is put up. We'll also have the contact details so you can get in touch with us if you have any things you'd like to ask. I do have to also mention that we have a special code to for people that want to actually buy something on the Chaosium site. We have a code and it is PAX Online 2020. It lasts till September the 30th and you get 10% off your order at Chaosium. So we'll put that somewhere in as well. And that does apply to the Miskatonic Repository and Jonstown Compendium products as well. That's pretty good.
Well, if you want to follow Dungeon Masters Guild on social media, we have a Facebook page, a Facebook group. We're also on Twitter and Instagram at DMS_guild. And if you are enjoying your PAX Online and are going to continue enjoying it this weekend, Saturday at 11:30 a.m. Pacific time, I will be on PAX 3 with a panel called The ABCs of Community Building. Hope to see you there.
Oh. Okay. I would very much like to thank Lysa and MT for joining us today in this panel. We hope that it's been really useful to everybody, and we're looking forward to seeing your creations up there on community content.